about Ten Hag? Where are we at with him? 3 months in, Simon. Togetherness, unity, a better mentality. How do you assess what Erik has done in his time there? Does his suit now fit?
I think in order to make an omelette, you've got to break some eggs. And I think there's a culture at Manchester United that he's trying to punch his way through and trying to get to a point where everyone understands where they're going, and it's going to take some pain. And I think we're seeing that pain. I think he's got the legacy of players that are causing him problems with the Ronaldo situation. I think he's got a cultural situation where they feel the need to remind young players that have come through Manchester United's youth development into their first team of their responsibilities both to themselves and the football club.
Yeah.
And I suspect it's probably no different to Alex Ferguson running after Lee Sharp and pulling him out of parties and making sure that Ryan Giggs is on the straight and narrow. It's all part and parcel of what you do with younger players. The observation I made about Ten Hag was about the exuding of authority. And I felt that when he was in front of the camera, it was like a little lamb shrunken into his suit and didn't look like someone that exuded authority. United are a long way away from where they need to be. A week ago, we were watching them getting spanked by Aston Villa. And everyone going, well, what's that about? Then they righted that wrong, unlike Everton did in the repeat cup tie that they had against Bournemouth. They beat Aston Villa in the return leg. And they've gone into the break with the narrative being United are on the mend. They're better. This is going to be a process where they're going to have to support him to change the culture, and he's going to have to be brave in doing it. Yeah. And I think ultimately the idea that it's togetherness, unity and a better mentality, well, those are platitudes. You've got to deliver them, install them with a discipline, and the team's got to win to underpin his philosophy. I think more than I certainly thought at the beginning of the season, I think he's got the courage of his convictions. But that can change overnight with these football people because sometimes they lack substance. I hope he stays with what he believes to be right and goes after it and believes that Man United is the biggest club in the world and that people playing for it get to understand that. Well, and then you'll get them back.
They appear to have, incidentally, have we got a leaky roof in the studio or something? What, are you expecting rain?
Oh no, I'm looking to anoint someone or perhaps poke them with my umbrella.
Poke that in my direction, as someone once said. Well, Ten Hag, though, I mean, to be fair to him, he has been very strong on what he said about this youngster Garnacho, who seems that, he needs to be in line when it comes to respect and discipline. This was Erik on him.
For me, was that the point to bring him in, but that he should have, that he had such an impact that you can't think that before. But yeah, he has, and this shows the real talent, what real talents can do. But it's only for him still a long way to go. You have to keep his feet on the ground, just as the whole team now, but he has to do much more investment because he will be recognizable for everyone, so it's much more important every time to confirm it. And big players know that, young players don't know. For now, it's a 4-week break, that's already a danger for him because he's now in the momentum. See how he's coming back, and we have to manage that with him. But when his attitude is good, I'm certain he will have an impact.
See, I like that. All right, Alejandro, you've got a 4-week break, but mind how you go.
Yeah, well, they obviously have very high hopes for him because you don't invest your time speaking about people that are not worth your time. So they obviously have high hopes for him as a player and high hopes for him as an individual to be developed within the confines of the football club to go on to greater things. Yeah. So they want to make sure that if he's got a propensity to lose his focus and has exhibited certain things. I mean, it was back in the day when Wayne Rooney was at Everton, there was always this argument about how David Moyes handled him, and that was about how regularly he played him. United are, we talked about earlier on about Ronaldo and him talking about young players not having any respect, which is bleeding ironic given where he's going with his particular situation right now. And the culture of a side like Manchester United, the greatness of this football club will be re-established by introducing the right mentality.
Sure.
So Ten Hag's doubling down on the detail with this young man.
I want to whiz through two of the other three topics of conversation at this stage. Rangers accounts revealed that Aston Villa paid out $4.25 million in compensation for Steven Gerrard. It's understood Villa had also to pay out a further $6.1 million for his backroom staff to be eligible to follow Gerrard to the Midlands. All in all equals 10 mil. I mean, with figures to obtain managers still relatively low in football terms, Simon, is the idea of a managerial gamble somewhat overstated?
Is a managerial gamble overstated? It's all relative, isn't it? Aston Villa are going to get £200 million a year by being in the Premier League. So to spend, I'm perplexed how you spend £6 million on backroom staff when you're only spending 4.25 on a manager. I'm perplexed at that, because they would have been on a fraction of the salary that he'd have been on, but just take it at face value because it's in their accounts.
Well, Rangers report details we also charge 6.1 in non-recurring costs.
I've no idea what that means.
Which includes settlement of litigations and contract termination.
I don't know who would be suing who and what the litigations were needed for, but notwithstanding, I'm not disputing the principles of it. I just don't understand why there'd be a £6 million cost behind taking your backroom staff and what litigations they could be referring to. But notwithstanding that, if you're talking about taking a manager, £10 million for him, and of course his ongoing costs as well, but £10 million as an acquisition cost for the key component of building a side is actually relatively small beer, isn't it? It's
nothing really.
It's 1/20th of the cost implications of running of the income you get from that football club on an annual basis. Then you move into the idea that should there be a transfer marketplace for managers? Look, there's an argument for both, and you can make that case because obviously by buying players, you're feeding a marketplace that ultimately also capitalises people's balance sheet with the value of that player. But players are responsible ultimately for their individual performance, and managers are responsible for the collective. Yeah. So if you start putting managers on transfer fees and being able to, when would you transfer them? At what particular time would you do it? And what would be the ramification of a manager deciding that he didn't want to be at a football club anymore and wanted to be transferred somewhere else? Right. You then have a situation where do you keep him under contract because ultimately you can't sell him. I'm not happy here. I want to be transferred in September, but the transfer window for you is closed, so I can't transfer you to in January. In the meantime, you can cause as much havoc as you want because you're disillusioned with the club that you're at. I don't see it.
Third topic I want to squeeze in just before we head to the bulletin. It's right up your street. Climate protesters continue to block roads up and down the country. Should football consider itself on the grand green scheme of things? I mean, Chelsea manager Graham Potter believes that Premier League clubs should consider protecting the environment by avoiding flights to away games. Graham feels that clubs should set an example by minimising domestic air travel.
Okay then.
Fair enough.
Off you go then, Chelsea. See how your players like that.
Well, he says, I think we can do better.
Yeah, I mean, like all those leaders around the world flying to COP27 in jets, and the Americans bring in 400 vehicles with them and God knows what other else. Look, there is a case, and we need to make sure that we are responsible towards our contribution to the planet. But I don't quite know why Graeme needs to make this point, because if he starts suggesting the players can't travel to war, then don't. By all means, stick your players on the train. And you be the poster boy for that, and see how that plays out for you. Because at this moment in time, I would have think that would be the least of your concerns, what planes you were flying on, or not flying on.
Okay.
Ask Dale Vince; he'll have you glued somewhere.
Yes, indeed.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1, on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app, and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.